Hello everyone, Justin here and good morning. So today we're going to be drawing a girl that I've found on the internet wearing goggles, ski goggles. And this was more interesting to me just because I'm really into skiing and constantly thinking of snow, skiing and snowboarding. But anyway, so I thought this was a nice reference picture where we've got a girl's face. You can just see her nose and her mouth, her lips, but there's a little bit of hair there, and that's pretty much it as far as her face. The main thing here is her goggles, which shows reflections. So I love drawing reflections, and what's great about it is what you need to do with these reflections is just draw what you see. You're not trying to imagine what it looks like. You're not drawing from imagination here. We've got this reference picture with clearly defined shapes and shadows on the goggles, which we will try to reproduce. Notice here when I first started drawing the goggles, and I started with the goggles by the way, just because it is the most obvious feature to start with for this picture, and it's the largest part. So notice that I was not happy with that initial shape that I drew. I'm trying to draw this as realistically as possible, as faithfully as possible, but if I was really trying to make it as accurate as possible, I would definitely take more time than I did for this particular demonstration. But anyway, erased my initial lines, and then once I'm a little happier with that, I'll just go ahead and start finalizing some of the lines and the shadows. Probably the better way would be to draw out the basic shapes first, lightly, put in all the features including the nose and the lips, where the sweater goes up or her jacket, and compare all the dimensions. Make sure their relative sizes are pretty accurate before finalizing anything, because obviously once you make lines a little bit darker, it's a lot more difficult to erase and not leave marks, which generally I'm not too worried about, just because you generally, like especially in a pencil drawing, you can just go over it with more shading, more pencil strokes, and it'll cover those areas that you had erased. Anyway, so what I try to do is go ahead and mark the basic shape of the goggles here. Try to really observe carefully. When you're trying to draw something realistic, it's very, very important to draw what you actually see, not what you think that you see, which is the pitfall for a lot of beginner artists. And that's obviously true for younger kids. When you ask them to draw something, they're already imagining what they're seeing and drawing based on really what they think that they see, but it's not really what they see. So as we get older, we can see more obviously that what we have on paper may not match what they were imagining to begin with. So going back to this drawing, you can see that I'm already marking down some of the darks, and this just gives me a sense of where the shadows are going to be. I want a lot of contrast. This picture in itself does have a lot of contrast. And by the way, this was a color picture to begin with, and I went ahead and edited it to be monochrome, and this just makes it more obvious to see where the darks are, where the gradients are, the different shades, the different darkness of the tones. I normally, if I was drawing from a reference picture, I don't bother doing that, because I can kind of, from a lot of practice, I can tell where I need to make things darker. But when you're first starting out, yeah, go ahead and do that. Make it black and white, especially if you're just using a pencil where you only have one tone, blacks and different shades of gray. So here, I'm trying to look carefully at the reflections and just trying to draw what I see. Now, I'm not gonna, I'm not as accurate as I really could be here, just because I'm trying to do this a little bit faster. But notice this nice dome that goes across the lens, and there's like a nice dark shadow, and it fades off into a point there over to the right. So I put that in, and it's very clear cut. The edges are very sharp, and just use fairly dark tones here using a lot of pressure. I'm using a mechanical pencil for this drawing, which is my most favorite pencil. And for the dark tones, I'm using 4B lead. Now I just switched over to another one that has 2B lead. So the 2B lead just makes it easier to draw in some lighter tones, lighter shades. So you can see here, I'm basically just using straight lines to put in the shadows, and I'll use either a smudging tool or my pencil or like a Q-tip or something like that to blend those lines in. The harder the lead, the more difficult it is to get rid of the actual lines. But you can see here that there are some darker spots and detail in this reflection, so I'm not that worried about it. And normally anyway, I'm not that worried about leaving pencil marks in the areas that are supposedly smooth and continuous shading. So don't worry about it. That's part of a pencil drawing, and that gives it a lot of character. Maybe a little bit more important when you're drawing something realistic, because you're probably not the best to be able to see obvious pencil marks. It totally depends on your style. A lot of my drawings that I do, like portraits of people I know, maybe people who are retiring, I'll make the face itself pretty realistic with not so obvious pencil lines. But then the peripheral parts, like as I go down to their body or down to their neck, I'll be very sketchy and loose, and you can really see the pencil marks. And to me, this actually gives a nice contrast from the realistic areas where the face is, and you go to the periphery, and then somebody who's observing it can see that, wow, this was made using just a pencil. Anyway, so going back to this drawing, once I'm happy with the goggles and I'm working on the nose, I'm always comparing where I'm going to put the nose relative to what I've already drawn. So I've got the goggles, and now I got to put the nose. How far down from the goggles are the nostrils, for example? And they're actually more or less level with the bottom of the goggles, and you can see here that I wasn't that accurate here. I made it a little bit lower, but what you don't want is to make it really low where it's obviously not accurate for what we were trying to draw. Same with the lips. I'm looking at the length, the height of the nose that I already drew, and look at the height of the lips that I'm going to draw, and looking at the reference picture, the height of the nose and the height of the mouth are almost exactly the same. So I'm going to try to reproduce that when I draw the mouth. And I'm also looking at the space, the negative space between the nostrils and the lips, making sure that distance is fairly accurate. And once I'm pretty happy with that, then I go ahead and start drawing in the lips. Now notice here I didn't even start drawing the lower lip before I started shading the upper. And this is just my way of doing things. If I feel like starting to put in the shading and the dark tones, I go ahead and do it and go from there. That way I don't have to go back to it. I can always go back and refine, and that's often what I do. But if I'm already there and I feel happy about things, why not just go ahead and start rendering it? All right, so the same thing with where I'm putting the upper part of the sweater. Looking at the height of the goggles, say like in the middle, and I compare that from the bottom of the goggles to the height to the top of the sweater. And I mark that just like just like the way I did here. So then I go ahead and start drawing in the face, and I just keep doing this, always comparing what I already drew to the last, and then stepping back every once in a while to see if the proportions still seem correct. You know, don't worry about it not being perfect. Nothing's perfect, and besides, no one who's gonna see your drawing will have the reference picture that you drew from. So always remember that. Well, not always, but generally. And any mistakes you make won't be obvious. Even if they saw the reference picture, once you get better at this, and remember, just practice, 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 draw a lot, draw different things, you will get better, and it'll come a lot more naturally. So anyway, don't worry about things not being exactly the way the picture looks. So anyway, going back to this again, I'm just roughing in the hair here and the ears. Try to keep the ears more or less even, left to right. Whenever drawing anything symmetric, always compare left to right, and imagine your center line. Make sure the widths on either side of your center line are fairly even, and just try to draw again what you see, not what you imagine that you're seeing. I'm using a fairly loose style here towards the bottom, where you can obviously see the pencil marks. And going back to drawing a lot, so you'll notice that in my channel, I'm trying to draw more. This channel is almost kind of selfish because I haven't been drawing much in the last few years, just because of my job, but because of my real job. And so this channel actually helps me to draw more, draw every day as much as I can. And you'll notice that the subject matter of my channel is quite varied, and it's important to draw lots of different subjects, lots of different things, and try not to get stuck on one subject matter. So let's say drawing cartoon characters. Yes, that might be your main interest to draw, but when you're first starting out to learn to draw, you want to obtain as many skills as you can, not just cartoon characters where realism is not as much of a factor, but try to draw realistic portraits, for example. Draw landscapes and use different media. Use pencils, use pens. You'll find that I'll also throw in some videos on different techniques, not just techniques, but using different materials, such as a wood burner. The way I use a wood burner often is basically like a drawing instrument, and I draw using the wood burner. So try different methods, different paints, watercolor, acrylic, different pens, whether it's ballpoint pen, art pens that are a little bit more expensive. Use different pencils. You may like using graphite pencils, where you actually have to sharpen the lead, sharpen the pencil, or like me, the mechanical pencils, which I prefer just because I don't have to sharpen. Draw different subjects. If you like Pokemon, I love Pokemon, my kids love Pokemon, and you'll find a lot of Pokemon videos on my channel. But I also try to draw Disney characters and draw them in different ways: pencils, markers, pens, and color them different ways. You can use markers, Copic markers, watercolors, colored pencils. Experiment. The more you get out there and try different things, the better you'll become as an artist. At some point, you may get asked to draw somebody's portrait once you get better, or some kid asks you to draw a certain cartoon character. Well, you'll have the skills necessary to do anything. So keep an open mind, especially when you're just starting, and you will get better. Just draw a lot, draw different subject matter, and I will try to touch on exactly what I was saying in future videos, of course. So anyway, back to our drawing. So you can see I already finished drawing the sweater, and you can see it's just kind of a rough rendition, and I'm gonna keep the hat here as well fairly loose, and I don't have a lot of the detail here. And here I'm gonna kind of draw from imagination. I'm imagining what the fabric is probably like, and keep it lighter shade. And you notice the lines here are following the contour of the hat, and immediately it gives it a sense of curvature and kind of a three-dimension. Adding a little bit of shading, of course, just to give it some form shading. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll just stop talking here. I'm yakking too much, and keep drawing. I will see you at the next video. I will also be putting up a lot of shorts videos of most of the step-by-step videos that I upload. Most of my videos are fairly long, step-by-step, real-time. But because everybody is in a time crunch, I also went ahead and put up shorts videos, basically preview videos that are short of most of these videos that I'm uploading, just so you can check it out first, usually 30 seconds or less. Check out the video, and if you want to learn to draw it step by step, check out the longer video. Here I'm using actually a pencil eraser and brushing it out using the brush end. I just got that, and I kind of like it, but nothing wrong with using a kneaded eraser also. Hey, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this wasn't too boring, and I will see you next time. If you liked it, got a little something out of it, please consider subscribing and give it a like. Write some comments and tell me what you think. If you'd prefer me to not talk, whatever. Hey, enjoy your day, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and thank you again. Bye.